This episode of History Saver is brought to you by Addressing Gettysburg. Addressing Gettysburg is a podcast that shares great experiences, quality programs, awesome guests, and is a welcoming community for all who love Gettysburg. So join in with host Matt Callery and find out why Addressing Gettysburg is one of the top-rated podcasts online today. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, right here on YouTube. So check out Addressing Gettysburg today, where history is not boring. Thank you to Addressing Gettysburg for sponsoring this video.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Welcome back to History Saver. Glad you're here. Glad you decided to stop into the channel and watch this little really short episode from Spotsylvania. And I'm standing on the Spotsylvania Courthouse battlefield here in Spotsylvania. And right behind me is where you're going to see John Sedgwick in the area where he's going to take his last breath. Let's take a look at the monument and explore this spot for just a moment. So this is where Major General John Sedgwick of the Federal Forces, the Union Forces, he's going to be commanding the 6th Army Corps here in Spotsylvania. He's going to be killed on this spot or somewhere around this spot on the morning of 9th May 1864. 9 May 1864, John Sedgwick, Major General, is going to be right here. He's going to be commanding the U.S. Volunteers, the 6th Army Corps, and he's going to be killed on this spot. This is the monument that's been placed here in memory of John Sedgwick. And this is an awesome place on the battlefield. This is right as you drive in. The Interpretive Center, if you come here to Spotsylvania to the battlefield itself, the Interpretive Center is where you are going and want to stop. First off, anytime you ever hit any battlefield, and that is right here behind the monument. So there's no reason why you should miss this monument to John Sedgwick. Now, this monument was erected and dedicated on May the 12th, 1887, on the 23rd anniversary of the heaviest day's fighting that would take place here at Spotsylvania. He's going to be killed here May the 9th, but the heaviest fighting is said to have occurred on May the 12th. And that's where they're going to erect this monument for the 6th Army Corps in memory of where John Sedgwick is going to take his last breaths.
Sedgwick was essentially a soldier. He had never married. The camp was his home, and the members of his staff were his family. He was always spoken of familiarly as Uncle John, and the news of his death fell upon his comrades with a sense of grief akin to the sorrow of a personal bereavement. Lieutenant Colonel Horace Porter, USA Staff.
As we walk over here, we'll talk a little bit about the race for Spotsylvania Courthouse. We'll talk about Laurel Hill, which is directly to our front here. And on May the 8th of 1864, there's going to be the hardest march of the war, as described by a 6th Alabama Infantry sergeant whose name is James Thompson. He's going to say on 8th of May, we had the hardest march of the entire war. We neared Spotsylvania. The rattling of musketry as we did so told us too plainly that our day's trials were not over. Now, after 2 days of vicious fighting in the Wilderness battlefield, which is not far from this spot, the armies would trudge south. They would make their way marching south towards this spot at Spotsylvania Courthouse. Now, the Union Army will march along the Brock Road, which is directly in front of us now. You may can see the sign right in the distance here, Brock Road. This is where the Union Army is going to be marching towards. Now, the Confederates are going to use a series of paths and country roads that's going to be farther to our west. And for both sides, this is going to be a miserable march. I mean, this is long, dusty roads, and it's just miserable. There's not much in this countryside. And it's going to be a march that's deprived of sleep for these men. Both sides are going to be soaked with sweat. They're going to have these wool uniforms on that's just going to be soaked to the bone, sweaty and dusty. And it's just going to be a very, very just brutal forced march. And in many places, the woods beside the road would catch fire. From all of the battle that's been going on in the area, the woods would catch fire, and then the smoke will fill the air, making it even worse. The dust, the smoke, all settled together along this road that you see in front of us, which is now paved. At the time, which wasn't, it was dirt. It's just going to be a very, very horrible spot for these men to have to march down. Now, the morning time brought no relief for these men. The Union soldiers would approach this spot at Spotsylvania Courthouse. They will learn that Confederate forces will hold the ridge 1/4 mile ahead of where we stand now, which is going to be a place where the Federals are going to repeatedly attack the position of. They are not going to be able to drive the Confederate forces from that position, and what has started as a race to Spotsylvania will end in a 2-week struggle for this village right here. Now, Laurel Hill, which is right in front of us, is one of the most important but least understood areas to most of the Spotsylvania Courthouse battlefield. Now, on 3 separate days, May the 8th, 10th, and the 12th, the Union troops would charge across these fields that you see in front of us. And they would charge from right to left. And this was an effort to break the Confederate Army's hold that they had on the woody ridge that is right to our left, right in the direction of this camera, past the sign and road. Now, each of these attacks would end in a bloody failure. Now, with each repulse, the Union soldiers' enthusiasm for the attacking ridge would diminish. One man would say, every man in the ranks saw the folly of attempt. And this was a guy from the 83rd Pennsylvania Volunteers who would say this. He would go on to say, and judging from the undercurrent of their conversation, it is not probable that they would have made a very determined effort or gone far. So he didn't think that this was going to be a very successful charge. In all, some 5,000 Union soldiers would fall here, all to no purpose. This in the long run isn't going to be any purposely driven attack here. May the 13th, the Union Army would abandon this hill known as Laurel Hill, and they would head east. And the Confederates would continue to follow them. So this is a very, very vicious part of the battlefield here, right across the road, as we can see here. Let's walk a little bit closer. And you can see the corn here. It's now marked by a cornfield. You can see the hill just to our front. And is this going to be for any reason? Well, no. They're just going to abandon these positions, and the Confederates are going to abandon them too in chase of the Federal Army. So 5,000 Union soldiers would give their lives in this position for what? Well, ultimately, it's not going to matter. But this is going to be one of the heaviest parts, considered one of the heaviest fighting parts of the battlefield. Now, it's not as famous as the Bloody Angle, which we have filmed in a previous video here from Spotsylvania during last year's symposium. It's not going to be as famous as that place. And I'm not going to show that place in this little short episode here because we've already been there. You could go back, watch that video, and it was on a day where I couldn't reproduce the beauty that was surrounding that location, which was so bloody and had such that bloody purpose to it. But we're going to explore a little bit of Spotsylvania. We're going to show you a couple of spots. We're not going in depth on the battle because that would take entirely too long to do. And we will be back here filming more episodes, but we're going to show you a couple of other spots, and then, well, let's see what we find. So as we walk along here, I mean, this is an awesome battlefield to come visit. Spotsylvania, the Wilderness, Chancellorsville, it's all pretty close together. So if you're wanting to see any of those 3 battlefields, including Fredericksburg, well, it's within maybe a 15-20 minute driving distance of one another. You could come see all of these battlefields, probably get them all done in one day. If you're really huffing it, you could probably see all of these battlefields in one day, and you've knocked out a very substantial portion in doing that of the campaigns here. And trust me, it's something you want to do if you're ever in this area. So we are right here at the Bloody Angle. I'm pressure for time because the sun is going down, but check this out, man. Deer standing on the Bloody Angle. Every time I come here to Spotsylvania, which this is only the second time I've been here, in this particular spot of the battlefield on the Bloody Angle, every time I have witnessed something just majestic. Last time was right after a rainstorm. You could go back, watch the episode here on the channel, and it was just a beautiful afternoon. Well, here this afternoon, as I'm passing through, I'm seeing these deer. It just reminds you, this field now is full of life, of which witnessed such carnage in May of 1864. I mean, just when you think about the spot where these deer are standing, what happened, you know, over 150 years ago, I mean, it's pretty surreal to see the life that's being born from a place where so much death occurred. So it's pretty neat. So just to kind of orient you where we are now, the Bloody Angle is right up there in the distance, past the road to the furthest end of the frame here. That is the Bloody Angle. That's just where we saw the deer. And we're standing right near the Confederate trenches and the Mule Shoe salient of the battlefield. And this is where you're going to have, just before 6 p.m. on May the 10th, 1864, 5,000 Union soldiers, who's going to be led by a guy by the name of Colonel Emory Upton. They're going to form in deep masses rather than traditional battle lines that you're used to seeing. And they're going to emerge from the woods that's just in front of us here. Now, as they do that, they're going to dash across the field that we see here, spreading across this road past my truck and back in that direction to that field. Now, as they do that, they're going to reach the main Confederate line in this area. And they're going to leap over the works. So they're going to begin stabbing guys with their bayonet. They're going to be swinging their muskets like clubs. This is going to be vicious hand-to-hand fighting in this area of the battlefield. It's going to be a bloody hell here in this area of the battlefield. Excuse the language, but that is exactly what it was in this position on May the 10th, 1864. There are going to be more than 900 Confederate prisoners and 4 cannon that are going to fall into their hands of Upton's men here. Now, the Federals are going to end up to sweep down the woods. They're going to widen the breach here, and no one is going to be able to make the arrangements to support the attack. And without more men, well, Upton could not go any further than what he had made it. So there's a misunderstanding of communication or something that happens, and there's no arrangements to support Upton's attack. And without any support headed towards his way, Upton cannot press forward any further than what he already has. Now, in the fields behind us here, right across this road, Confederate generals are going to marshal troops. They're going to grab troops, they're going to marshal them together, and they're going to end up recapturing the works that the Federals from Upton had just taken in this section of the battlefield. Now, daylight's going to turn to the darkness, and Upton will be in the fight for his life. in this section of the battlefield. The Confederates would end up making a counterattack. Now, Confederate General Richard Edwell is going to respond quickly to Upton's breakthrough that he's going to make here at Doyle's salient. He's going to wade into the melee, and he's going to be shouting to the outnumbered defenders, "Don't run, boys! I have enough men here in 5 minutes to eat up every damn one of them." Edwell was good on his word. Within minutes, thousands of Confederate soldiers were converged on this very spot, and although it was initially successful, Upton's attack then would quickly turn into the fight of his life, a fight for survival in this salient, in this battlefield. Confederate lines coming across the fields behind us, right across this road, would then rage against the Union battle lines here. Without help, Upton's men could not hold out for very long, and darkness was settled over this battlefield, and the Southerners, the Confederates, would drive Upton's men from the salient and recapture the cannons that they had ended up losing to Upton's attack earlier in the evening. Now, Upton is going to capture about 950 Confederates in his initial charge here. And the Union soldiers who captured them are going to hurry them to the rear under heavy fire. So where we're standing right now and walking in Spotsylvania is the Muleshoe, what is known as the Muleshoe salient, as I said before. And this is going to be just to the left of the Bloody Angle. The Bloody Angle is right where my finger is pointing across the road. And this is, I mean, just walking here, you can just imagine the fierce hand-to-hand combat that's taking place in this area of the battlefield. And you can imagine the roars and screams of Upton's men as they charge against Edwell's men. And as Edwell charges in the Confederate counterattack against Upton's men. And, well, Upton, he doesn't have any support to help him. And without that support, well, unfortunately, there's not much he can do. Pretty cool to be standing slam dead in the middle of this salient, and this eerily quiet. And yeah, I mean, pretty cool. So we've kind of switched spots here for a moment. You can see the salient, the Muleshoe salient, right in that area. The Union soldiers, just to give you kind of a position here where we are in the battlefield, Upton's men are going to be lining up this far tree line that you see in the distance. They're going to be pushing this way. Edwell's going to be somewhere in this area. But right here where we are now, I want to show you this spot. This is something I've actually always wanted to see. And so we've made a slight detour and come over here for a minute. And this is the McCall house. And I hope I'm even pronouncing it right. But this is going to be the home of a farmer named Neil McCall and his unmarried sisters, Mary, Eliza, and Millie. Now, their farm was a typical farm that had dotted here at Spotsylvania County. Here's a look at it here on the interpretive placard. And it was a few hundred acres that they had here, and they were produced corn and grain and a few other items here. Now, his neighbors and himself, they owned enslaved people, which was a circumstance common to more than half of the Spotsylvania residents here. And around the house, they would have a kitchen. You can see a kitchen there and other outbuildings. And their neighbors, the Harrisons, who are going to live to the south of them, and the Landrums, are going to be roughly right up under a mile. And now, Mr. McCall, Neil McCall, was absent during the fighting here of May of 1864. But his sisters were not. They were survived the battle by taking shelter in the basement of the house. When they emerged out of the basement, they found a landscape that had been dominated by nothing but death. They're right in the middle of where Upton's men are going to charge from that wood line in the far distance to the Confederate works. And then that fighting is going to spill across this road. Now, this place is surrounded by low ridges on all sides of it. And it's going to be low ridge lines here. Now, his house is going to sit in the center of the battlefield. On the night of May the 8th, 1864, Confederate engineers built the budging line of earthworks that wrapped around his farm. You can see his farm right here. And you can see exactly where we are. Now, when Union troops broke through the Muleshoe salient on May the 12th, Confederates would swarm over the farm in this location. They are desperate to reclaim the lines that Upton's men have just taken. Thousands of troops would pass by this house and route some of the most desperate fighting the world has ever seen in the American Civil War, the Bloody Angle, which is straight through these woods in front of us. And it's going to be only a few hundred yards through these woods where you're going to have hundreds of thousands of bullets that's going to pelt the earth around this house. Artillery shells are going to fly in by the hundreds, and there's going to be explosions. There's going to be a lot of death, carnage, and just chaos in the spot where we're standing. When the Confederates will fall back to a new line early on the morning of May the 13th, they will leave behind the McCall's house here that's going to be just riddled with bullets. And the fields that was once their farm that you see around this location are going to be strewn with the core, or the just the bodies of so many men. And you can just look all around where this foundation of where the house once stood would have been, and you can well, just imagine the death and carnage that was actually here. Yeah, pretty cool to be in this spot and just think about that for a moment. This is such a cool battlefield to come visit. You have really got to come see this to experience Spotsylvania for yourself. The things that I always do, if you guys are new to the channel, you go watch a lot of my videos, a number of my videos here, you would typically hear me talk about this. And that is why it's important to study the landscape of the battles here. Well, here at the McCall's farm place, you can see that evident here in this field behind me. Where their farms once was, you can see how the ridge lines dip, come up, dip again. Now you got to imagine here where earthworks as well. But these are going to play key in helping either the defense or the attack of both armies. And if I'm standing right here on this ridge, well, I've got a clear view of that wood line straight across this road. Now, if I was to dip down right down here in this valley, I could not see that. During the Civil War, you have line of sight, line of fire, which means basically if you could shoot it, if you can see it, you can shoot it. If you can't see it, you can't shoot it. So if you don't have line of sight on your target, well, you cannot shoot your target. And this is the reason why studying the battlefield terrain during the American Civil War is so important. That is the reason why it's important for you to get boots on the ground in these battlefields to see the landscape for yourself. And this is another cool example of a battlefield and the landscape of how that affects the battle itself. And this is just another cool example that you can actually see here. Pretty cool. Just check it out for yourself. Get your boots on the ground. You know I say pretty cool a lot, and when I say that, I mean it. I mean, this is really neat to be standing here and walking in the same footsteps of the men who were here and where all of this would happen in May of 1864, and just try to imagine all the carnage, all the bloodshed that must have taken place here in this spot. It's pretty surreal. So I couldn't think of a more fitting way to end my time here in Spotsylvania, to end the 2026 Emerging Civil War Symposium, the 11th Annual Emerging Civil War Symposium. And, well, I'm just glad I'm able to share these adventures with you guys. And if you have watched any video on this channel, if you're watching this video and you think you like what you see, please subscribe. It's free. And it, I want to be able to share these with you, share the education of the American Civil War with you guys, and share these places with people who may not have the means to come here themselves. It's a way for me to share my adventures with you guys, share my interest in history with you guys, my interest in the Civil War with you guys, and other areas of history. But it's also a way for some of you guys who may not ever be able to make it here to have a way to experience the battlefield. And if you can come here, do. Come here, experience it for yourself, experience all these places you see on this channel for yourself. And, well, just learn. We can never stop learning. I don't know everything. I never will know everything, nor do I ever want to know everything. We learn every day, and we learn by standing on spots like this. We learn by the preservation of spots like this. And we learn by being able to have organizations like Emergent Civil War and the authors, the many authors who write for Emergent Civil War, to be able to teach and preserve the history of places like Spotsylvania, like the place I'm standing in now. And that is why it's so important, because without history, well, we don't know where we're going in the future. And you've got to know where you've been to know how to move forward. And it is pretty cool to have the opportunity to do this. And this is what an 8-year-old me dreamed of. And now I'm standing here. Pretty cool. And thank you guys for watching these episodes. And if you think I've earned your subscription, please subscribe. And until next time, in our next adventure, we'll see you on the next episode of History Saver. And until then, well, we'll see you down the road. Stay safe. Keep preserving history as always.